Let's take a look at Kabir, too. Kabir, writing in the early 15th century. We don't know an awful lot about him. We know more than some of the others that we're looking at today, but he was a Muslim. He's living in northern India, surrounded by a significant number of Hindus. So he is already in that cosmopolitan world, a world of conflict. And his work is a remarkable exploration of where Islam, Hinduism, Sufism, mysticism, asceticism, physicality, spirituality, the political, the social, the theological, where all those core elements of human existence intersect. He was a very popular writer, still is to this day. He has a significant number of songs and aphorisms, or little witty sayings, of generally expressions of folk wisdom, which tells you an awful lot. When somebody is writing in popular forms, that is significant. They're not writing necessarily as a great eminent theologian of institutionalized religion. They're not writing for other intellectuals or priests or authority figures. They're writing for common people who sing songs, common people who don't have lots of time to sit around reading, but who can remember an aphorism, like their grandma maybe told them when they were tucking them in at night. He is also notable, I would say, as a Muslim voice for disdaining the physical world in ways that we have seen, for an embrace of pure spirit, that focus on purity, that singular devotion towards an ideal. That's a very Islamic concept. In the final state, we get a great example of this belief. The ineffable tale of that final simple state, it's utterly different. It can't be weighed on a scale, it can't be whittled down, it doesn't feel heavy, it doesn't feel light, it has no rain, no sea, no sun or shade, it doesn't contain creation or destruction, no life, no death exist in it, no grief, no joy, no solitude and blissful union are absent, both solitude and blissful union are absent from it. It has no up or down, no high or low. It doesn't contain either light, either night or day. There's no water, no air, no fire that flares again and again. The true master permeates everything there. The eternal one remains unmoving, imperceptible, unknowable. You can attain him with the Guru's grace. Kabir says, sacrifice yourself to the Guru and remain ensconced in the true community. SAT word, right in that first line. Ineffable. What does ineffable mean? I'll give you a hint. You can say, I don't know, and you'd be right. Both that you don't know, and that's what ineffable means. It means it cannot be known. The ineffable. You know? What makes Beyonce so great? Ineffable. cannot be described, cannot be contained, cannot be imagined even, because it's so overwhelming. The ineffable tale of that final, simple state. It's utterly different. You can't compare it to anything. You can't explain it in any coherent way in words that we have, these clumsy, awkward, indistinct words. We're talking about the final state. The goal of all of that spiritual progress that is embedded in Hindu culture, matched against the enormity of the monotheistic God in the Islam. Ineffable. I just don't get it. That's what that means. And look at it. Everything after that is negative. They're trying to explain something through negatives. It's not this, it's not that. Well, what is it? I don't know. It's not this, it's not that, it's not this other thing, it's not this third thing, it's not this and that and that. But it never actually says what it is. Because it's ineffable. Can't be weighed on a scale, can't be whittled down. Doesn't feel heavy, it doesn't feel light. It's not physical, it is aphysical. It has no rain, no sea, no sun or shade, doesn't contain creation or destruction. It's unnatural. Those are properties of nature. So it's not physical, it's not natural. No life or death exists in it, no grief, no joy. Both solitude and blissful union are absent from it, so it's not even human. It's not. It has no up or down, no high or low, doesn't contain either night or day, there's no space, there's no time. No water, no air, no fire that flares again and again. No elements even. It cannot be divided into simple elements. Think about that's not just casual things that they're throwing out there. Water, air, fire, these are the elements. The true master permeates everything there. The eternal one remains unmoving, imperceptible, unknowable. He is the one thing. He is the Godhead. The single, indivisible substance of God. Divinity reduced to its essence of irreducible spirit. You can attain him with the Guru's grace. You can attain him. You can make progress. You can achieve that. Kabir says, sacrifice yourself to the Guru and remain ensconced in the true community. Sacrifice yourself. Submit yourself, i.e. Islam. Submit yourself and remain ensconced in the true community. Curious use of that term. The community of worshipers, the community of humanity, the community of the universe, perhaps even, but community. To me, that's a social word. That's almost a political word. Can you ignore everything on earth, everything that's going on around you, and focus on divinity out there? And that makes all the neighbors you need? Is that possible? I don't know. It is ineffable. And beware the world, brothers. Be alert. You're being robbed while wide awake. Beware of the Vedas, brothers. Be vigilant. Death will carry you away while the guard looks on. The neem tree becomes the mango tree. The mango tree becomes the neem. The banana plant spreads into a bush. The fruit on the coconut palm ripens into a berry right under your noses, you dumb and foolish rustics. Hari becomes sugar and scatters himself in the sand. No elephant can sift the crystals from the grains. Kabir says, renounce all family, caste, and clan. Turn into an ant instead. Pick the sugar from the sand and eat. Beware the world. We've seen that. The world is pollution. The world is corruption. Keep it at arm's length. Leave it behind entirely if you can. Beware of the Vedas, brother. The Vedas are, well, we're talking about the ritualistic Hindu practices of religion. That's all just silly stuff. That's all just playing games. That's not about true religion. That's not about a true experience of God. That's just a lot of people doing a lot of silly things. But it's around him an institution, institutionalized religion. So while he is mocking that, he understands that it is powerful. The neem tree becomes the mango tree becomes the neem, the banana plant spreads into a bush, the fruit and the ground. Why are we suddenly talking about fruit? Well, what's going on here? Well, nature. One thing becoming another. One plant segueing into another. Metamorphosizing. Nothing on earth, nothing natural is permanent. And that would include institutions like religion or institutionalized religion. It has nothing to do with the true practice of spirituality. Individualized, specialized, and marked by a relationship with divinity itself rather than just a temple, an idol, a priest. Hari becomes sugar and scatters himself in the sand. No elephants can sift the crystals from the grains. You find God in the tiniest places. You find evidence of God mixed in with everything, sometimes in the most unlikely things. Can you think of anything less nourishing than sand? Can you think of anything smaller than a grain of sand that would attract your notice? But if you can find evidence of God, evidence of divinity itself, spread among the most unlikely places, it is your duty to seek that out. And it's something that can only be done as an ant, as small enough to appreciate, to find those little marks of divinity. An individual actor, not the elephant. Again, a significant symbol in the Hindu universe. Not an institutionalized religious ritualistic practice, but rather an individual perceptibility of divinity, picking through all of the waste of sand to find those little moments of sweetness, the sugar. Pick the sugar from the sand and eat. Mosque with 10 doors. Broadcast, O Mullah, your merciful call to prayer. You yourself are a mosque with 10 doors. Make your mind your Mecca, your body the Kaaba. Yourself itself is the supreme master. In the name of Allah, sacrifice your anger, error, impurity. Chew up your senses. Become a patient man. The Lord of the Hindus and Turks is one and the same. Why become a mullah? Why become a sheikh? Kabir says, brother, I've gone crazy. Quietly, quietly, like a thief, my mind has slipped into the simple state. 10 doors refers to 10 different orifices of the human body, and I will let you count those at your leisure. But we have seen this before where the individual body is a representation of a church unto itself. It is enough for the worship of God. You don't need the institutional buildings around you. He seems to be taking a little bit of a shot here at Islam as well as Hinduism. The Lord of the Hindus and Turks is one and the same. Why become a mullah? Why become a sheikh? It's all just distraction. It's all just silliness. What really matters is the spiritualism within. Kabir says, brother, I've gone crazy. We have seen references to the irrational, to the ecstatic, to the letting go of your rational, logical, measurable, worldly perspective to embrace something larger, more emotional, more spiritual, more ineffable. Quietly, quietly, like a thief, my mind has slipped into the simple state. Simple state is like the final state, I would say. It is simple because it is all one, like the single undifferentiated Godhead. You are in a simple state. You are one with God. But I love that word slipped also, because it seems accidental. It seems almost undesired. I don't know. Think about the focus on progress that we've seen throughout a lot of these poems. Think about that notion of perfectibility that comes with it. That we can have it in our control to achieve divinity. But here, it happens by accident. Slipped into the simple state. Now, you can read that line in part with, quietly, quietly, like a thief. Are you supposed to be doing this? Are you doing something illicit? Are you transgressing onto God's realm by slipping into this simple state? It's unsure. It's uncertain. But it's prompting you, the poem is prompting you to ask these questions. Purity. Now here he really just takes a sledgehammer to institutionalize religion. Tell me, O Pandit, what place is pure where I can sit and eat my meal? I love that. Great, fine. You're so concerned with everything being pure in the eyes of God. You're so concerned with everything being clean and worthy and all of that, but I just have my own concerns. Tell me, O Pandit, what place is pure where I can sit and eat my meal? Mother was impure, father was impure, the fruits they bore were also impure. They arrived impure, they left impure, unlucky folks, they died impure. My tongue's impure, my words are impure, my ears, my eyes, they're all impure. You Brahmins, you stolen the fire, but you can't burn off the impurity of the senses. The fire, too, is impure. The water's impure. So even the kitchen's nothing but impure. The ladle's impure that serves a meal, and they're impure who sit and eat their fill. Cow dung's impure. The bathing square's impure. Its very curbs are nothing but impure. Kabir says only they are pure who've completely cleansed their thinking. Now, you don't have to know what any of those words mean to understand that the word impure appears an awful lot. That's its most striking aspect. Again, feel free to sit there and just wait for the poem to club you over the head with something. What is it about anything that makes you go, huh? What? That's odd. Everything seems to be impure. Now, this is a mocking of the ritualistic practices of primarily here the Hindu tradition, where there is a great sense of you need to be ritually cleansed in order to engage in the practice of worship. And the opportunities for contagion from various kinds of impurity are ever present. They're everywhere. Now, that is the world that he lives in and that he feels so frustrated by. So that repetition, impure, 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 impure. It's everywhere. It's everything. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's always concerned about it. It's always, 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 always there. But what is it, really? Does it have anything to do with spirituality itself? I might be dirty, but I can still wonder about God's grace. I can still yearn for it. I can still feel that little whisper of divinity out there in the universe.
You could be a sinner, but as long as you turn from your wicked ways, that's all that really matters. When you're talking about, when they talk about like Allah and God or something.
Yeah, you can turn from all of that. If that is, you can turn from wickedness, you can turn from impurity, be it physical, spiritual, whatever. You can turn from all of that if you trust that your relationship with God is predominant. This seems to be saying that there's too much focus on all the external stuff. There's too much focus on the ritualistic practices. And ultimately, those ritualistic practices become empty, hollow, just husks with no actual belief in them, no faith. Kabir says, only they are pure who completely cleansed their thinking. Cleansed of ritualism itself. Cleansed of the obsession with purity. There is a purity that is about spiritual, not physical purity. And the spiritual is what he's pointing to. The spiritual is what he's emphasizing. But think also from another perspective on that. When you come up on somebody who is so focused on purity, especially something that is ineffable, usually that one person is defining purity in their own way. And they're saying, no, that is not pure. I know what real purity is. That's a kind of unitary thinking. I know exactly what it is. Nobody else is meeting me on that. He is criticizing everybody else for focusing on their definition of purity, of exercising their own kind of unitary thinking, but he is doing it from a position of unitary thinking, saying, nope, that is not pure. We haven't really defined pure. And he's transposing it through the poem, I would say, from the physical to the spiritual. You can have arguments about whether or not, like, your hands are clean. And it seems to me that, within a reasonable scope, you can come to an agreement as to whether or not hands are clean. But if we're talking about something spiritual, it's much harder to really pin down. So there is this sense of an absolutist perspective popping up here. Debate. If you love your followers, Rama, settle this quarrel once and for all. Is Brahma greater or where he came from? Is the Veda greater or its origin? Is this mind greater or what it believes in? Is Rama greater or the one who knows him? Kabir says, I'm in despair, which is greater, the pilgrim station or Hari's devoted slave? Now this is a little on the theological side of things here. It's a intellectual debate that you can read in the footnote, shifts the focus a little bit between which is worth more, the cause or the effect. And that's all fairly abstract, but when you get into, is the cause, if God is the cause and the effect is your worship, is your worship more valuable than God? Is the fact that you feel inspired of more value than that which inspires you? He's taking on a significant theological argument here, and he seems to be arguing for an individualized valuation. Again, anti-institutional. He's asserting the right of individuals to establish their own sense of worth, their own sense of spirit. But he is, I think, also, by posing it as a question, he's emphasizing through a series of questions the unknowable, ineffable aspect of it all. And what does organized religions of all forms tend to offer but answers? This is what this means. This is what this is. We know what this is. A plus B equals C. That's it. But by posing it all as questions, it's more irresolute. It's more uncertain. It's mirroring that position of an individual in society trying to figure out the universe, trying to understand God, trying to understand his fellow man, trying to understand anything at all about the times he lives in. It is suggestive, but not conclusive. The poem is prompting you to think in certain ways, but not telling you what to think. One of the great images, moth. Joy is grief, sorrow and grief are endless. The mind's an elephant, mad, amnesiac. Air and flame burn as one, just as when the moth, its eye enchanted by light, flies straight into the lamp, and wing and fire flare together. Who hasn't found restful peace in a moment of pleasure? So you brush aside the truth and chase the lies you hold so dear. At the end of your days, you feel the temptation, you covet joy, even though old age and death are close at hand. The world's embroiled in illusion, error. This is the process always in motion. Man attains a human birth. Why does he waste and destroy it? The symbol of the moth that is attracted to a flame, so it flies into it, as you can see just with a porch light, quite frankly, attracted to the light, flies into the flame and immolates itself, because flames are more dangerous than porch lights. But you take that simple, physical, homey, recognizable human image, you crack that open into spirituality, and it's not hard to see the parallels. The light is God. The moth is all of us individually, flying around kind of lost. We see the spirit, we fly towards it. There is that reference to irrationality at the top again. The mind's an elephant, mad, amnesiac. The elephant again, another symbol right there, perhaps caught in its own husk of belief. Mad is crazy, irrational, perhaps emotional. The imagery is, again, very inconclusive. It's very elusive. It's suggesting different things, and it's mystical. We don't know the answers. We don't know what's going on here necessarily. We don't have any firm sense of what the hell any of these lines mean. But they're nudging us toward an understanding of the relationship between man and the divine that is ultimately, word of the day, ineffable. The simple state makes you think of the final state. Slight rephrasing. Listen, you saints, I see that the world is crazy, irrational. When I tell the truth, people run to beat me up. When I tell lies, they believe me. I've seen the pious ones, the ritual mongers, they bathe at dawn. They kill the true self and worship rocks. They know nothing. I've seen many masters and teachers. They read their book, their Quran. They teach many students the business tricks. That's all they know. They sit at home in pretentious poses. Their minds are full of vanity. They begin to worship brass and stone. They're so proud of their pilgrimage, they forget the real thing. They wear caps and beads. They paint their brows with the cosmetics of holiness. They forget the true words and the songs of witness the moment they've sung them. They haven't heard the news of the self. The Hindu says Rama's dear to him. The Muslim says it's Rahim. They go to war and kill each other. No one knows the secret of things. They do their rounds from door to door, selling their magical formulas. They're vain about their reputations. All the students will drown with their teachers. At the last moment, they'll repent. Kabir says, listen, you saintly men, forget all this vanity. I've said it so many times, but nobody listens. You must merge into this simple state, simply. Here he is trashing the Muslim tradition, the Hindu tradition, and saying it's all crap. Keep your focus on the simple state. All of the little practices, all the little rituals, all of the hand washing and concerns with purity, all the ritual mongers that are bathing at dawn, all of their concern with the book, the Quran, the Bible, whatever you want it to be. All of the brass and stone idols of Hinduism. They're so proud of their pilgrimages. All of that behavioral stuff that doesn't mean anything if it's not imbued with the spirit, the real thing. He is just taking a blowtorch to these institutional traditions. Don't stay. The land's a wilderness. This world's a paltry paper packet. A spot of rain will wash it away. This world's a garden of thorns. Snarled and snared will perish in pain. This world's all tree and tinder, kindled. It will roast us like sacrificial victims. Kabir says, listen, my good men, the true master's name is our lasting abode, our station, our destination. Karma. Escape reincarnation. Escape it with a focus on the one singular God, the true master. Seek release from the physical world. So he goes from saying just a little while ago that there is some value in this world, but we should still seek to release it. Those conflicting ideas rubbing up against one another, crashing into one another. Yeah.
I think that's like the thing of like the big debate of would you like to be immortal, would you not like to be immortal, because they both have pros and cons either way. It's like, okay, if you're immortal, it's like, oh, I get to live this good life, this long life. But then it's like you're seeing you can't really have a long, fulfilling relationship with other people, or just have an understanding of life because you've gone through it for so long. You kind of get bored, you kind of get tired.
Yeah.
So it's like a thing with like karma, like, yeah, it's good to be reincarnated because, you know, the world has these nice things, but after a while it's like, man, just give me a
Yeah. You keep your focus on the next thing. You keep your eyes on the prize, essentially, whether it's through multiple reincarnations or just slogging your way through this world the once. You can be in this world, you can appreciate this world, but keep your focus on what's out there. And then we have all of these aphorisms, which are just folksy wisdom, little easy to remember sayings. Don't be vain, Kabir. You're just a wrapping of skin and bone. Even those who ride horses under parasols are quickly buried in the mud. Even those who ride on horses under parasols, that sounds like fancy types, rich people. Not like you and me. Again, we can see the positioning here. Aphorisms are generally sayings, folk sayings by common people. Common, probably poor people, possibly illiterate people who can remember a short rhyme or a little, folksy saying, but can't necessarily quote abstract, books on theology. But here, even those who ride on horses under parasols are quickly buried in the mud. We are all ultimately, regardless of our worldly wealth, the same in God's eyes. But there, God is mud. God is expressed through nature. So it is a complex little knot of theological exposition that's being phrased in a just homey way, like Grandma would say while she's stirring at the stove. Kabir, sow such a seed that its tree will flourish perennially, cool shade, abundant fruit, foliage full of birds at play. I don't know what that means. You got a lot of metaphors. You have some vague natural allusions. But he's playing with images that are very common, if not universal, and that would have particular resonance among a certain class of people. Even if you were to transform the 7 oceans into ink, the world's trees into pens, the whole earth into paper, you couldn't write down the list of God's excellences. Again, little disparaging of writing, of intellectuals, of smarty pants types who do all that writing. But all of that, if you had unlimited ability to write, you couldn't write down the list of God's excellences. Well, is that because the list is too long? Or is it because you have no consciousness of what the excellences are? Is it the quantity or the quality of the divine that is beyond us? So you see, these little sayings can be unfolded to remarkably complex debates. The man with a truthful heart is best. There's no happiness without the truth, no matter how many millions of times one tries to find it by other means. No happiness without the truth. Again, that sense of absolutism, that sense of unitary truth. There is one truth. He is rejecting everybody else with their one truth, but he is asserting one truth of his own. That's curious to me. I see conflict there. Knowledge ahead, knowledge behind, knowledge to the left and right, the knowledge that knows what knowledge is, that's the knowledge that's mine. A little bit of a tongue twister, a little bit of a puzzle, fairly conventional policy about objectifying knowledge that you see in a lot of traditions. Socrates said very famously in the Greek tradition that the one thing I know is that I really don't know anything at all. I'm paraphrasing there, but that's roughly what he said. Self-knowledge is greater than book learning, let's say. But also that sense of an absolutist, fundamentalist, unitary knowledge. I don't know all of those little things, but I know the one big thing that incorporates everything. That's a little troubling. My opinion there. The one who stays within the limits assigned to him is a man. The one who roams beyond those limits is a saint. To reject both limits and their absence, that's a thought with immeasurable depth. So again, references to distance and measurability, that's the difference between God and man. Man can measure these things. Man thinks in these terms. God is beyond that. God defies that. God is ineffable. Accomplish one thing and you accomplish all. Seek to do all and you lose the one vital thing. Again, one, unitary thoughts, one vital thing. Here, of course, that one vital thing is spirituality. You cannot do everything, but you should attend to just the one thing. But it's very limited in what he's saying. The one thing that only he seems to understand. When you water the root of the plant, it flowers and bears fruit to satisfaction. Yeah, natural imagery that even grandma would recognize. The poem of witness is the eye of knowledge. To understand it, gaze into your heart and mind. Without the song of testimony, the quarrels of this world don't end. Locating true spirituality within an act. The poem, talking about poem. Well, okay, a poem is art. Songs, poems. When you imbue that with a element of worship, when you practice art for spiritual purposes, as a way of experiencing the divine for yourself and of allowing others an avenue to the divine, that is the noble cause of art. That is fulfilling. That is spiritually invigorating, as opposed to just stale sand, stale grains of sand that provide no nourishment, no inspiration, no fulfillment at all. This is what he's driving in all of these. That notion of art and worship are one, the one idea. So by writing these poems, he is participating in divinity itself. By reading these poems, you can find a way to participate in divinity itself. To see through these poems and recognize that they are just words and stuff and measured out evenly marks on a very mundane, worldly, ultimately insufficient page. What's beneath the words, behind the words, is the spirituality, is the meaning, and that's where we have to go.